You wake up one morning, and the life you thought you were building for years is ripped away in an instant. Your spouse, your best friend, has not only betrayed you, but has already moved on without a second thought. But here's the twist. You're not just going to let them walk away unscathed. What happens when the person who's been left behind decides to rewrite the story and takes revenge in the most unexpected way? You might think you know what comes next, but trust me, you don't. Stay with me, because the last thing you expect will change everything. The evening air in the small town of Westbridge was crisp, with the fading sunset casting long shadows across the neighborhood. I had just pulled into the driveway of our home, a modest house that we had poured our dreams into for the past 7 years. I could hear the faint sound of our 2 children laughing in the backyard, the echo of their innocence carrying through the air. This was the kind of life I thought I deserved, a life of peace and love. Yet as I stepped out of my car, a knot began to form in my stomach. Something was off. It wasn't the first time I had felt this unease, but today it was different. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls of our perfect little world were about to come crashing down. I walked toward the front door, each step weighed down by the heavy anticipation. Inside, the house was silent, too silent. My wife Emily was nowhere to be found. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound that greeted me. I called out her name, but there was no response. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen counter, neatly placed beside the phone, was a letter with my name on it. My hands trembled as I reached for it, tearing it open without a second thought. The words inside blurred for a moment, but I forced my eyes to focus. Grant, I'm leaving. I know this might come as a shock, but I need to find myself again. I've been feeling trapped for months, and I can't live this lie anymore. You deserve better than what I can give you right now. I'm sorry. Emily. The words hit me like a freight train, and I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. The woman I had married, the one I had built my life around, was leaving me without so much as a conversation. I crumpled the letter in my hand, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The pain was sharp, but beneath it was a cold fury that I hadn't recognized before. The woman I had loved, no, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, was gone, and she hadn't even had the decency to face me. The anger swirled inside me like a storm, but even more than the betrayal, it was the humiliation that stung the most. For the past year, I had noticed the subtle shifts, the late nights at work, the distant stares, the excuses about needing space. I had chalked it up to the stress of life, of raising 2 kids, of running a household. But I had been blind. She had been slipping away, and I hadn't seen it coming. Worse, I hadn't felt it. As I stood there, staring at the crumpled letter in my hand, I felt a surge of something deep within me, a sense of injustice, of wanting to right the wrong that had been done. I had given her everything, my trust, my love, my loyalty, and in return, I had been cast aside like an afterthought. This was the moment when everything changed. I knew then that I couldn't let this go. Emily had chosen to walk away without a second thought, without even a conversation. She had made her decision, and now it was my turn to make mine. But how could I get back at her? How could I make her feel the same sting, the same heartbreak, the same crushing weight of betrayal that she had left me with? I didn't have the answers yet, but I would. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I spent the next few days walking around like a ghost. Emily's absence left a hole in the house, a hole that echoed in every empty room, every quiet corner. The kids didn't understand. They were too young to grasp the weight of what had happened, but they knew something was off. Every time they asked where Mommy was, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I wanted to tell them the truth, but how could I? How could I explain betrayal to a 5-year-old? I didn't know where Emily had gone. She hadn't left an address or any hint as to where she was staying, only a phone number she insisted I call if I wanted to speak with her. That number sat there in my phone, taunting me, reminding me of the finality of it all. She was gone, and no amount of pleading would bring her back. I thought about calling her, asking why, trying to understand. But then I realized something that made my stomach turn. I didn't want to understand. I didn't want to beg her to come back. What I wanted, more than anything, was to make her feel as small and insignificant as she had made me feel. I wanted her to know that the power she thought she had over me was a lie, that she hadn't broken me. She'd only ignited something inside me that was far darker than anything she could have imagined. I went to the garage, the scent of oil and dust filling my nose as I opened the toolbox. There, under the tools I had used to fix the lawnmower or build the kids' treehouse, I found what I was looking for, a picture frame. In it was a photo of Emily and I at our wedding. We looked happy, so full of hope and promise. The kind of love everyone talks about, the kind of love people spend their lives searching for. That photo, that memory, was a lie. It no longer meant anything to me. It was a relic of a past that no longer existed, a symbol of a love that had evaporated the moment she chose to walk away without a second glance. I grabbed the frame, my fingers tightening around it until the glass creaked. Then in one swift motion I threw it against the concrete floor. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the empty garage. I stood there, my breath coming in ragged gasps, watching the fragments of our life scatter across the floor. The anger, the betrayal, the hopelessness, it all came rushing back. This was my catharsis, my moment of release. But that wasn't enough. No, I needed more than just this fleeting satisfaction. I needed a plan. A plan to make her see that I wasn't the weak man she thought I was. I wasn't going to beg her for forgiveness. I wasn't going to cry over her. I was going to make her regret leaving me. I spent the next few hours piecing together a plan, and as the night fell, the pieces started to fall into place. I knew that Emily wouldn't come back to me willingly, not after what had happened, but there were other ways to hurt her. I'd seen the way she looked at me before she left, the indifference in her eyes when I needed her most. It was as if I had become invisible to her, and that thought alone made my blood boil. But there was something I could do. I had noticed a change in Emily's behavior long before she left. She'd been sneaking around, acting distant, like she was hiding something. And I wasn't wrong. I had a feeling there was someone else. Someone she had been turning to for comfort while I was at home, trying to keep our family together. It wasn't hard to find out. I knew Emily well enough to figure out where she would go. I knew the places she visited, the friends she kept in contact with. So, I did what I had to do. I reached out to a private investigator. The next day, I was sitting in a small, dimly lit office. The man across from me, a scruffy-looking guy with a deep voice and a sharp gaze, listened intently as I told him what I needed. "Find out who she's seeing," I said, my voice low but steady. "I want to know everything." The investigator nodded. "It won't take long," he assured me. And that's when it began. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for yet, but I knew that once I had the truth, it would be the final piece of the puzzle. Once I knew who had been the one to steal her attention, I would have the leverage I needed. I could make her feel the sting of betrayal in a way she would never forget. But I had to be patient. I couldn't rush this. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about regaining control, about proving to her that I wasn't the same man she had walked away from. This time, I would be the one in charge. I walked back to my car with a sense of purpose. It felt good to have a plan, but it wasn't enough yet. I needed more. I needed to make her understand the depths of her mistake. And I would. I had nothing to lose now. The next few days were a blur, a mix of waiting and wondering, each moment stretched out as I tried to calm the storm of emotions brewing inside me. Emily had gone, and my world felt hollow without her presence. The kids were too young to fully understand what had happened, but their questions, their innocent questions, cut deep. "Where's Mommy? Why doesn't she want to be here with us anymore?" I had no answers. All I could do was hold them, promise them everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure myself. The private investigator, a man named Doug, had told me it would take a week, but by the end of the fourth day, he was already calling me with updates. His voice over the phone was calm, almost clinical, but I could hear the underlying tension in his words. "I've found something," Doug said. "It's not just a hunch, there's someone else. I've got him tagged. His name is Paul. He works in the same office as Emily. Started a few months ago, seems like they've gotten close." The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. I had known. Deep down, I had known there was someone else. But hearing it confirmed was like a knife to the heart. I had always suspected something. A change in Emily's behavior, the late nights, the hushed phone calls, the way she would smile when she thought I wasn't looking. I had been blind to it. But now, the truth was clear. She had moved on, and it had happened right under my nose. "Get me more information," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. "I want to know everything about him." Doug's voice softened. "Grant, I know you're angry, but don't rush into anything without knowing the full picture. You need to be careful." "I'm not a fool," I snapped, the anger bubbling to the surface. "Just get it done." That night I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my mind, trying to piece together the moments I had ignored, the way Emily had withdrawn from me, the way she had stopped sharing her thoughts and dreams. I had been so focused on keeping our family together, so blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. The thought that she had been hiding this relationship with Paul all along, laughing behind my back, it twisted my insides. I couldn't help but feel betrayed on every level. She had taken my love, my trust, and thrown it away. And now she was with someone else, the person who had replaced me. The next morning I woke up with a plan. I had to take control of the situation. I had to confront Emily, not with tears, but with the truth. I couldn't let her think she could walk away from me so easily, without facing the consequences of her actions. I wasn't going to beg her to come back, but I was going to make her see that she hadn't just hurt me. She had shattered our family. Doug called again that afternoon. "I've got more. Paul's married. He's got 2 kids. He's been separated from his wife for about a year, but it seems like he and Emily have been seeing each other for at least 6 months." The words stung like acid, but they also gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. Emily hadn't just been fooling around. She had been planning her exit for a long time. She had been having an affair, living a double life while I had been obliviously tending to our children and our home. She had destroyed our family, and now it was time for me to destroy the life she had built with Paul. I felt something shift inside me. The anger was no longer just an emotion. It had become a force, a driving need to make her understand the weight of her betrayal. And I would do whatever it took to make sure she did. I couldn't allow her to get away with it. She thought she could walk away from me without a second thought, but I was about to make her realize just how wrong she was. That night I drove to the address Doug had given me for Paul. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. Maybe I just wanted to see him, to look into the eyes of the man who had taken what was mine. Or maybe deep down I wanted to confront him, ask him how long he'd been with my wife, what made him think he could replace me. But as I sat outside his house, my knuckles gripping the steering wheel, I realized something. I didn't need to confront him. I didn't need to make a scene. What I needed was to hit Emily where it hurt. I needed to show her that the life she had with Paul was built on a foundation of lies, and I knew exactly how to do it. The following morning I took the first step. I called in a favor from an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Karen. She was the ex-wife of one of Paul's close friends, and she had been more than happy to help me gather information about him when I had called her the night before. By the time I met her for coffee that morning, she had everything I needed. Photos, social media posts, text messages, everything to prove that Paul had been living a double life with Emily. I left the coffee shop with a cold, calculated resolve. I had the evidence now. Emily would see it all. The truth would come crashing down on her in a way she could never ignore. That afternoon, I gathered the kids and went to the one place I knew Emily would be, her parents' house. I had no intention of speaking to them, not right now, but I knew Emily would be there. She always visited her parents after work. It was a routine. As I stood in their driveway, the photo of Emily and Paul in my hand, I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was it. The moment everything changed. I wasn't going to beg for her to come back. I wasn't going to plead for the family I had lost. No, I was going to make her regret everything. I was going to show her that I wasn't the man she had thought she could discard. When she opened the door, her face was a mask of surprise. But behind that mask, I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She knew. She knew I had found out. "Grant," she said, her voice weak. "What are you doing here?" I held up the photo, letting her see it. "I know about Paul," I said, my voice steady, almost detached. "I know about everything." Her face went pale, and for a moment she said nothing. Then finally she whispered, "Grant, I'm sorry." Sorry? Sorry didn't cut it anymore. Her apology, barely above a whisper, hung in the air like a cruel joke. I stood there, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. For so long I had been the one holding this family together, working late, taking care of the kids, making sure everything was in place. I had sacrificed pieces of myself, never asking for anything in return, only to find out that while I was giving, Emily had been taking my love, my trust, and worst of all, my dignity. "I don't want your apology, Emily," I said, my voice cold, a stark contrast to the pounding of my heart. "You've already made your choice. You don't get to make it right now." Her eyes flickered with panic. "Grant, please, let me explain." Don't." I cut her off, holding the photo higher. "I already know. You've been living a double life for months, hiding behind this perfect little world you've created with Paul. You think I didn't see it? Think I didn't notice you pulling away? Don't try to make excuses. I'm not interested in hearing them." Emily opened her mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. Her face was a mixture of guilt, frustration, and fear, as if she didn't know how to salvage this. "You think I'm the one who deserves an explanation?" I asked, my voice rising now. The anger I had been holding back for so long was starting to boil over. "You chose him over me, over this family, and now you're standing here looking for sympathy?" "I never wanted to hurt you, Grant, I swear," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "It just happened. I didn't plan for it to go this far. It wasn't supposed to be like this." I could feel my control slipping, but I gripped it tightly, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I had already been broken, over and over again, by her. But this was different. This wasn't about salvaging a marriage that was beyond saving. This was about making sure she understood the consequences of her actions. She had left me, left our children, and left our life together for something that was never real. "You think I'm just going to let you walk away and pretend like nothing happened?" I spat. "You don't get to do that, Emily. You don't get to walk away from this with your head held high like you haven't just ripped apart the family you promised to cherish." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She had crossed the line, and there was no going back. "Grant, please," she whispered, stepping closer, reaching out for me. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I never meant to hurt you. I was just confused." "You were never confused, Emily," I said, my words sharp. "You were selfish. You chose to lie, to betray me, and to hurt the people who trusted you most. And now you think a few tears and a half-hearted apology will fix it? It's too late for that." I could see the realization in her eyes, the acknowledgement that she had pushed me too far. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. There was no way to go back to what we had before, and she knew it. "You're right," she said quietly, wiping her eyes. "It's too late. I understand. But I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm that was raging inside me. But I couldn't. The betrayal had been too deep, the hurt too much. I had given everything to this marriage, everything to her, and she had thrown it all away. And for what? For a man who wasn't even worth it. "I don't need your explanations anymore," I said, my voice low but firm. "I've been trying to save something that wasn't worth saving. You've made your choice, Emily. And now you'll have to live with it. But you won't do it alone. You'll have to face the consequences of everything you've done." She stared at me, her lips trembling, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of regret in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. Regret wasn't going to fix this. It wasn't going to fix the years of lies, the years of betrayal. It wasn't going to bring back the trust she had destroyed. "Where are the kids?" I asked suddenly, the need to protect them rising up inside me. I couldn't let her drag them into this mess. "They're at my mom's house," Emily replied, her voice barely audible. I thought I'd take them with me after I figured things out, but I didn't want to do this in front of them. "Good," I said, my jaw tightening. "I'll take them. You don't get to use them as a way to get me back. I won't let you." Emily nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I didn't want to tear the family apart," she said softly. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had already made my decision. I turned and walked away from her, heading toward the car. I had no interest in hearing anything more she had to say. My mind was already on the next step, the next move in this game. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Emily walk away from this without paying for the devastation she had caused. She had taken everything from me, but she hadn't taken my resolve. And that was the one thing I was going to make sure she understood. The drive back to my house was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the engine as I tried to keep my thoughts from spiraling. The kids were at Emily's mother's house, safe for now, and I wasn't about to drag them into this mess. As much as I hated the situation, I knew I needed to focus on one thing: the truth. I had to make Emily face the consequences of her choices. No matter how messy it got, I reached out to Doug, the private investigator, first thing the next morning. I had everything I needed, but I was going to need more. More proof. More leverage. I wasn't just going to confront Emily and let her walk away with some half-baked apology. No. She needed to understand the depth of what she had done. Doug had given me all the information I needed about Paul. He worked at a local tech company, one of those places that seemed to breed office romances. They had met at a conference, according to Doug's report. And from what I could see, their affair had been ongoing for months. Emily wasn't just running away from me. She was running into the arms of another man. But it wasn't just the affair that bothered me. It was the lies, the betrayal, the quiet dismissals. Emily hadn't just walked out on me. She had chosen to deceive me every step of the way. And now it was time for the world to see who she really was. Not the woman she had presented herself to be, but the woman who had torn our family apart. I made a plan. I wasn't just going to confront Emily. I was going to expose everything. I wanted her to feel the sting of her own actions. If she thought she could leave without repercussions, she was gravely mistaken. I reached out to Karen, the woman who had helped me gather information about Paul. She was a bit of a wild card, but she had been right to help me, and I knew she had her own score to settle with Paul. We met at a small, out-of-the-way cafe, a place where no one would think to look for us. "Grant," she said, taking a seat across from me, her eyes scanning the cafe nervously. "I've got the final piece for you, Paul's dirty little secret. I did some digging of my own. Turns out, he's not the angel he's pretending to be." I leaned in, my heart pounding. "What do you have?" She pulled a folder out of her bag and slid it across the table. Inside were documents, photos, and texts. Evidence of Paul's previous relationships and debts. Things he had hidden from Emily. She had fallen for the wrong man, and now I was going to make sure she knew it. I scanned the documents, a sense of satisfaction building inside me. Paul wasn't just some innocent bystander in this affair. He was a liar, a cheater, and someone who had manipulated Emily just as much as she had manipulated me. If she thought her new life with him would be any better than the one we had, she was in for a rude awakening. "I need you to get this into the right hands," I said, my voice low, cold. "It's time for Emily to see who she's really been dealing with." Karen smiled, a wicked grin spreading across her face. "I've got just the person in mind. Don't worry, Grant. This will get out." The next few days felt like an eternity. I kept myself busy with the kids, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But my mind was never far from the plan I had set in motion. Emily had made her bed with Paul, and now it was time for her to lie in it. I didn't let her know what was coming. In fact, I didn't speak to her at all. She had called a few times, but I ignored her messages. I wasn't going to let her off that easy. I wanted her to feel the uncertainty, the tension that had plagued me for the past year. I wanted her to realize that there was no escaping the mess she had created. But there was something deeper going on, something I hadn't fully processed yet. As much as I wanted to hurt her, as much as I wanted to make her regret everything, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of sadness deep inside me. This wasn't who I had thought Emily was. She wasn't some cold, calculating woman. She was the mother of my children. She had once been my best friend, and now she was a stranger. When the day finally came, I didn't waste any time. I'd arranged for everything to be put into motion. I had Emily's secrets ready to be exposed, and Paul's lies about their relationship would be unveiled for all to see. I arranged a meeting with a reporter, someone who owed me a favor. It wasn't something I was proud of, but in this moment, I didn't care. I knew the media would pick up the story quickly, and that was exactly what I wanted. The world needed to know what Emily had done. The reporter arrived at my house that afternoon. A man in his early 30s, dressed in a well-fitted suit, he was eager to hear what I had to say. He listened intently as I laid out the details, the affair, the lies, the manipulation. He was intrigued, but there was one thing I hadn't anticipated. "What about your kids?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. "You're going to expose their mother like this? Do you really think that's fair to them?" The question hit me harder than I expected. The kids. They were innocent in all of this. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of our mess. I paused, my breath catching in my throat as I thought about them. "I'm doing this because they deserve better," I said finally, my voice steady. "They deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know that I wasn't the one who betrayed them." The reporter nodded, understanding the weight of what I was asking. He promised to get the story out, but I could sense the reluctance in his eyes. He wasn't comfortable exposing a family, even if they weren't perfect. But in the end, it wasn't his decision. It was mine. I left the meeting with a sense of finality. This was it. The game was over. Emily would never be able to hide from her actions again, and as much as it tore at me, as much as I hated the idea of hurting her, I knew I was doing the right thing. The truth was the only weapon I had left. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and restless nights. Emily had tried to reach me, but I ignored her calls, her messages, her attempts to apologize. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. The media storm was coming, and I wanted to make sure I was prepared when it hit. It was almost like clockwork. A few days after I met with the reporter, the story broke. It wasn't just a local headline, it was everywhere. The affair, the lies, the hidden debts of Paul, the manipulation of Emily's actions, all of it was out in the open. The headline read, "Local woman exposes her family for a life of deception, affair revealed, marriage shattered." I couldn't help but feel a twisted satisfaction as I read it. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about restoring my dignity. Emily had used every ounce of my love and loyalty, and in return she had betrayed me. She had ripped apart the very life we had built together, and now it was my turn to take control of the narrative. But as the days passed, The reality of what I had done began to sink in. My phone started ringing nonstop, with people I hadn't spoken to in years calling to offer their opinions, family, friends, even acquaintances. The sympathy was overwhelming, but it didn't reach me. It wasn't the pity I needed. It was a sense of justice, and I knew that wasn't something the world could give me. Only I could restore it. Emily's parents called, furious, their voices dripping with condescension. They demanded that I apologize for airing our dirty laundry in public, but I refused. I wasn't going to be manipulated by their guilt or by their misguided sense of family loyalty. Emily had made her choice, and now she had to deal with the consequences. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had been replaced by something much colder, an unshakable resolve. But it wasn't until I saw the impact on the kids that my heart ached. They were confused, and their little faces, so full of innocence, broke my heart every time they asked about Mommy. "Why isn't she here, Daddy? Is she coming back soon?" I knew I had to protect them. I would do anything to shield them from the pain Emily had caused, but I couldn't hide the truth from them forever. As much as I hated seeing their confusion, I knew they would understand one day. They would see that their father was strong, that I had fought for them, and that I had stood my ground. The media buzz began to die down after a week, but the tension in the house remained. Emily finally reached out in person, showing up at my doorstep with her face pale and her eyes red from crying. I had no intention of making this easy for her. "Grant, please. I'm begging you," she said, her voice strained. "I never wanted any of this. I was confused. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I've realized how wrong I was." I looked at her, my heart colder than I ever thought possible. There was no warmth left for her. No room for the woman I once loved. What was left now was a shell of the person I had trusted. A woman who had abandoned everything, our family, our life, for a fleeting moment of escape. "You never wanted this?" I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You never wanted this? You've spent months lying to me, deceiving me, and you think a simple apology is going to make it right?" "I know I've hurt you," Emily whispered, her hands trembling. "But I need you to understand I never wanted to hurt the kids. I never wanted to destroy our family. I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake." I stared at her, the anger I had been holding back rising once more. But this time it wasn't just anger. It was resignation. I realized that I had been living in the past. Holding on to a version of Emily that no longer existed. I had been fighting for a future that she had already walked away from. "You can apologize all you want, Emily," I said quietly, my eyes hardening. "But it won't fix anything. You've already destroyed everything, and no apology will change that." Her eyes filled with tears. "Grant, please don't say that. I love you. I still love you." The words hit me like a blow to the chest, but I pushed the pain aside. "You loved me?" I asked, my voice flat. "You loved me when you were with him? When you lied to my face every day? You loved me when you abandoned this family?" "Love isn't something you throw away, Emily. And you threw it away the moment you chose him." Her face crumpled, and I could see the pain in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for the damage she had caused. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice barely audible, but I didn't say anything more. I just turned and walked away from her, my footsteps heavy as I headed back inside. There was nothing left to say. That night I sat down with the kids and explained things as gently as I could. They didn't fully understand, but I promised them that everything would be okay. I would make sure of it. They would always have me. As I tucked them into bed, I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "I love you, no matter what." And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight in my chest begin to lift. It wasn't gone yet, but it was starting to fade. I wasn't broken anymore. I was healing, and I would make sure that my children grew up knowing they were loved and that their father was stronger than ever. The weeks following Emily's departure were a strange kind of limbo. The media frenzy had died down, but the undercurrent of tension in the house remained. The kids were adjusting as best as they could, though I could see the confusion in their eyes every time they asked about their mother. "When is Mommy coming home, Daddy?" they would ask with their big, innocent eyes. How do you explain something like this to a child? How do you break the truth gently without breaking their hearts? I couldn't. All I could do was assure them that everything would be okay, that Mommy would still love them, even if she wasn't living here anymore. But I knew, deep down, that their world had already been shattered. There was no putting the pieces back together. I still hadn't heard from Emily after that final confrontation. I knew she had tried to reach out through text, emails, and calls, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. The truth was, I didn't want to hear her apologies anymore. I didn't want to hear her explanations. I was done with her. I had always believed in second chances. I had always told myself that love was worth fighting for, that people could change if they were truly sorry. But this was different. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was betrayal at its deepest, most soul-crushing level. And it wasn't something I could forgive easily. But the hardest part, the part that ate at me every single day, was seeing Emily's life unfolding in front of me. She had moved in with Paul. The affair that had once been a secret was now a public spectacle, and she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Social media made sure of that. I could see her posts, photos of her and Paul at restaurants, smiling, holding hands, acting as though nothing had ever happened. It stung, but it also fueled something inside me. The part of me that had been hurt, the part that had felt discarded, now had a fire in its belly. If Emily thought she could erase me, if she thought she could move on from everything we built together without facing the consequences, she was gravely mistaken. I spent the next few days digging into the details of their relationship. What Emily and Paul didn't realize was that I had already taken precautions, tracking her every move, keeping an eye on everything. She might have thought she could escape unnoticed, but I was determined to make sure the truth didn't stay buried. I had access to bank records, texts, and emails. The fact that they thought I wouldn't fight back had been a grave mistake. I hadn't just been sitting idly by while they carried on with their affair. I had been building a case, preparing for the moment when Emily would have to face everything she had done. Then, one evening, as I was sitting alone in the living room, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at it and saw an email from the private investigator I had hired, Doug. "Grant, I've got something. It's time." I knew what that meant. Emily had made her bed with Paul, and now it was time for her to lie in it. I opened the email and my eyes narrowed as I scrolled through the attachments. There it was, the smoking gun I had been waiting for. Paul's financial records, emails between him and Emily, and, what hurt the most, photos of them together that they had thought were private. But now they weren't. They were about to be broadcast for the world to see. I had planned on confronting Emily once more, but something inside me told me it wasn't worth it. No more face-to-face encounters, no more half-hearted apologies. This time, I was going to hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation, her image. She had spent years portraying herself as the loving mother, the devoted wife, the perfect woman. And I was about to show the world what she really was. I contacted the reporter who had covered the story the first time. I told him I had new information that would take things to a whole new level. The moment the story hit, it would be more than just about an affair. It would be about the web of lies Emily had built to cover it all up. The story broke the next day. The media went wild, and Emily's world came crashing down. The headlines screamed, "Local woman's affair exposed, hidden secrets, financial scams, and betrayal revealed." It wasn't just her affair with Paul that came to light. It was the way she had used our finances to support her new life, the money that had gone unaccounted for, the lies she had told our children. The public reaction was swift, harsh, and unforgiving. People saw her for who she really was. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I wasn't celebrating her downfall, but I was relieved to see that justice was being served. She couldn't hide from the truth anymore. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, they asked again about their mother. They didn't fully understand what was going on, but I knew they could sense the shift. The tension was palpable. They had witnessed the chaos, the anger, the pain, but now they had a glimpse of the truth. The woman they had once looked up to had hurt their father, and no amount of pretending could change that. "I don't know when Mommy is coming back," I said softly, my voice steady. "But I'm here, and I always will be." They smiled, their innocent faces lighting up at the reassurance. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. I was fighting for them. I was fighting to make sure they grew up with the love and stability they deserved. I wasn't the man I used to be. I wasn't the man who begged for forgiveness. I was the man who stood tall, who fought for what was right. And Emily would have to learn that. The weeks after the story broke felt like I was living in someone else's life. The shockwaves of Emily's betrayal reverberated through every part of our community. And every time I left the house, I felt the weight of the stares, the whispers behind my back, the sideways glances. Some people pitied me, others judged me. But there was one thing I knew for sure. Emily had finally been exposed. But even as the world turned its attention toward her, I couldn't help but feel the emptiness settle in again. Yes, I had won. Yes, she had paid for the damage she caused. But it wasn't enough. The anger that had driven me for so long now felt hollow. The satisfaction of seeing her get what she deserved had worn off, leaving behind a bitter taste. What was left after the revenge? What did I have now? I found myself back in the quiet of my house late at night, staring at the photo of Emily and me from our wedding day that still hung on the wall. I hadn't taken it down. Something about leaving it there felt like a final step in the healing process, an acknowledgement of what had been, what I had lost. It was part of my past, and as much as I wanted to forget that past, I had to face it before I could truly move forward. But the moment that truly changed everything, the moment that made me realize just how far I had come, happened when I picked up the phone that evening. It wasn't Emily calling for once. It was Paul. I wasn't sure what to expect when I answered, but the calm in his voice was almost too much for me to handle. "Grant," Paul said, "I'm sorry for what happened. I've been trying to reach out to you, but I know it's probably the last thing you want. I wanted to say I never intended for any of this to happen. It just got out of control." I didn't immediately respond. Part of me wanted to hang up, to cut him off, to give him a taste of his own medicine. But I realized something in that moment. This wasn't about Paul anymore. It wasn't about Emily either. It was about me. And I wasn't going to let either of them control my emotions any longer. "You're sorry?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Is that what this is? A half-hearted apology for ruining my life?" "Look, I get it," Paul said, his voice wavering slightly. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, I got caught up in something. I know that doesn't excuse what happened, but I can't undo it. I can't fix what I broke." "You can't fix anything, Paul," I replied, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. "But that's not your problem anymore. You have to deal with the consequences of your actions, just like Emily." There was a pause, and for a moment I thought he might say something else, perhaps try to justify his behavior, to offer another weak apology. But then he simply sighed. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I'm not the enemy here. I didn't mean for this to go the way it did." "I never thought you were the enemy, Paul," I said, my voice a little softer now. "You were just a part of a bigger problem. Emily and I were already broken long before you came into the picture." Paul didn't say anything else after that, and I hung up. That conversation had been strangely freeing. I realized then that I had nothing more to prove to anyone. Not to Emily, Not to Paul, not to anyone in the world. They had hurt me, yes, but in the end, they had only proven how much stronger I was. I had survived it. I had taken the pain, turned it into something that didn't define me, and emerged on the other side as someone who was finally free. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Emily. It was the same old message, the same tired apology, the same explanation of how confused she had been. I never meant to hurt you, Grant. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I wish I could. I miss the family we had. I stared at the message for a moment, wondering if it was even worth responding. But then, something clicked inside me. I didn't need to answer. I didn't need her to validate me or to apologize. I had already moved on, and it felt good to let go. I typed one simple response, my fingers steady on the keyboard. I've already moved on, Emily. I'm not looking back anymore. I hit send and set the phone down, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. That was it. I was done. No more anger, no more revenge, no more holding on to the past. I had reclaimed my life, and I was going to build something better for myself and for my kids. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. I focused on my work, the kids, and healing. Emily was still in my life in a way. There were co-parenting moments, the occasional exchange of texts regarding the children's needs, but I no longer felt tethered to her. I wasn't angry anymore. The resentment that had once consumed me was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of closure. One afternoon, I picked up the kids from Emily's house. They were excited, their little faces bright as they chattered away about something they had seen on TV. They were happy, and that was all that mattered. As we drove home, I looked at them in the rearview mirror, and something inside me clicked. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I was building a new future for us, one where I was no longer defined by the betrayal I had suffered. I had made it through the storm, and I was finally standing on solid ground. Everything's going to be okay, I whispered to myself, more as a reminder than a statement of fact. The past was behind me. The future was unwritten, and I was the one holding the pen. And with that, I knew I was ready to embrace whatever came next.